Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar, the Access and Equity in Linked Learning. I am going to go over a few logistical pieces before I kick it off to my colleague, Liz Guillen. My name is Nancy Zhang, and I'm the Strategic Communications Specialist for the Linked Learning Alliance. Right now, all the attendees are on mute, and you must be connected via phone or computer to be able to listen in. At the end, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So to your right, you'll see kind of like a panel where you can actually enter in questions, and those questions will be sent to the organizers and also the panelists to be able to answer. So just make sure as we go through the webinar, you're typing in questions. And then we can get started, and I'm going to kick it off to Liz.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Guillen. I'm Director of Legislative and Community Affairs at Public Advocates. I'm also privileged to be the chair of the Linked Learning Equity Council, and I'll be moderating today. Thanks so much for joining us. We are thrilled to have so many attendees here today who already play a direct role in implementing the linked learning approach, and there are others who want to learn more about the possibilities that this approach holds. We have a great panel of speakers lined up to help us explore the information in this new report. First, we are joined by one of my colleagues and fellow co-chair of the Linked Learning Equity Council, Arun Ramanathan. He is CEO of Pivot Learning. Hey, Arun.
Morning, Liz.
Arun is a member of, I'm sorry. I'm on to the next speaker that I'm introducing. Sorry. Mia Warner is the next speaker. She's a member of the SRI education team. For the past 7 years, SRI has evaluated the linked learning implementation approach at 9 California school districts as part of the Linked Learning District Initiative. The report we'll discuss today is based on these findings. Welcome, Mia.
Hello, everyone.
We're also excited to have with us a linked learning director from Fresno Unified School District, Sally Fowler. Good morning, Sally.
Good morning.
Lastly, you'll be hearing from a student in a linked learning program about her pathway experience. Quaco Power is from an environmental science pathway in Oakland, California. Hi, Quaco.
Hi.
Linked learning is a strategy to improve student outcomes and address achievement and skills gaps effectively, particularly among students who have low prior achievement. Linked learning pathways prepare students for college, career, and life by integrating 4 core components. They are rigorous academics, career technical education, work-based learning, and comprehensive support services. This reflects a commitment to provide all students, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, gender, prior academic achievement, or special learning needs, with equitable access to and opportunities for full participation in high-quality linked learning pathways. This is a hallmark of the linked learning movement. Today, we're highlighting this report, Access and Equity in Linked Learning. You should have received a version of this report from the Alliance by email in preparation for the webinar. So this brief describes the successes and the challenges that school districts have experienced in fostering access and equity in linked learning pathways. It examines 5 groups of students frequently underserved by traditional schools. The brief was developed from findings from a 7-year evaluation of the systemic linked learning implementation in 9 school districts. The evaluation aimed to determine if linked learning makes meaningful impacts on the trajectories of students, including students who have a history of low prior achievement and come from an underserved community, or both. In addition to a deepened understanding of these impacts, the brief provides recommendations to pathways and school sites on practices that support equitable pathway access. Our colleague from SRI will walk us through the findings for each student subgroup. which were derived from the 7th year evaluation of linked learning programs. We will discuss the successes and challenges that districts experienced, promising strategies that districts are using today to ensure equity is at the forefront in order to expand access to high-quality linked learning in and across districts and regions. We're also going to discuss the linked learning certification and linked learning analytics system and how these resources for the linked learning field can support access and equity in linked learning. Before we dive into the findings of the report, Arun Ramanathan will provide some context about equity in education and why it is so imperative that the linked learning movement commit to preparing all students for success in college and career.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Arun Ramanathan, and I'm the CEO of Pivot Learning and the Vice Chair of the Linked Learning Equity Council. So, the linked learning movement emerged out of both an economic imperative and an equity imperative. And the essence is, many of us know that for much of the history of secondary education in this country, and definitely in California, too many students were either assigned to a college track or a career track, and in many schools that's still the case. And far too many students were not on course to go to college, and a high percentage of students that weren't on course to go to college or to a great career were Latino and African American and low income. So that bifurcation was clearly inequitable. It's clearly ineffective at preparing our workforce in what is a very rapidly changing global economy. And what we know, and this often contrasts with the anecdotes that you might hear in the press or the occasional things that get posted on Facebook, but the truth is that 99% of jobs created nationwide after the Great Recession have gone to workers with some level of post-secondary education. There is this clear wage difference, but that's also in the area of job creation. So post-secondary education is a definitive need for our secondary students, graduating secondary students, but it's also a definitive need that we link those, that work to good careers. Unfortunately, only about 45% of Americans right now hold an associate's degree or above, and these implications are particularly severe because we note that less than half of the country has access to these newly created jobs and will continue to have a lack of access to these newly created jobs. This data is also particularly stark, again, when you start looking at it disaggregated by racial and socioeconomic groups. We know that graduation rates have been trumpeted as increasing over the last several years, and they're now at about 83%. But for African American students and Latino students, those numbers are still lagging and far below what we would hope for as a nation or as a state. Right now it's 75% for African American students and 78% for Latino students. And then when you start taking a look at dropout rates, it's also the highest among African American and Latino students. So getting out of high school and getting into college are challenges really for what is the majority of the student population in the state of California and an increasingly larger percentage of the population of students nationally. And you can see this in the post-secondary enrollment data. For the national average is 40%. Again, far too low when you think about that data on job creation. But for African American students, it's 34%, so we're really talking about a third, and for Latinos, it's 36%. Again, close to a third. And again, when you look at this data, you have to remember that African American and Latino students in the state of California comprise about 70% of our student population. So the data is pretty clear. I mean, we're failing too many students nationally. There's a socioeconomic, economic imperative to do something different so all students are prepared for success in our 21st century workforce. And that's where linked learning comes in. Based on SRI's evaluation, linked learning students in certified pathways earn more credits, are more likely to complete high school than similar peers in traditional high schools, and the skills that linked learning students gain translate into better jobs than those of their peers, as indicated by benefits such as paid vacation, sick leave, and health insurance. So I'm going to hand it over to Mia Warner now from SRI Education, who will walk us through the findings of this fantastic report and share some district strategies.
Thanks so much, Arun. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, you're good.
Excellent. So my name is Mia Warner. I'm from SRI Education, and I'll be going over some of the key findings from our research brief on access and equity, which you should have received, access and equity in linked learning. And my co-principal investigator, Kira Kasperi, is also on the line, so we can both take any questions you may have at the end of the webinar. So first, I wanted to just give you a little bit of context for the research I'm about to share, and Liz gave a little bit of this up front as well. But essentially, the James Irvine Foundation launched the Linked Learning District Initiative in the 2009-10 school year and engaged SRI as the independent evaluator for the initiative at the same time. And the goal was to demonstrate the effectiveness of the linked learning approach if implemented at a district systems level of pathways. And you can see on the screen the 9 participating districts, which ranged in size, including both urban and rural districts, and all of which had a high proportion of disadvantaged students. Linked Learning Pathway Certification, which was an external review process based on indicators of pathway quality, began the following year, and our analysis focuses on certified pathway access and equity, and specifically for 5 historically underserved groups: students with low prior achievement, English learners, African American students, Latinos, and female students. And I'll just note that because Montebello Unified School District did not have any certified pathways, they're not included in the analysis I'm about to share. So first of all, access and equity are broad terms, but for the purpose of our evaluation, we examine access in terms of how representative pathways were of their district's overall high school enrollment. And we operationalize equity by comparing student success in pathways to that of students in traditional high schools within each subgroup. So in other words, English learners in pathways are compared with similar English learners in traditional high school programs. So let's start with access. So for the sake of time, I'm going to show you an example of one of the access charts that are available in the full research brief, but I'm not going to have time to go into every student subgroup because there's a lot of charts. So this chart shows the enrollment of students with low prior achievement overall and in pathways by district. So these are straight descriptive statistics. The blue bar represents the percent of students with low prior achievement enrolled in high school in the district overall. And the yellow bar represents the percent enrolled in pathways. And what you can see here is the extent to which enrollment patterns really vary across districts. In some places, pathways are attracting lower proportions of lower achieving students than the district overall, and in other places, that pattern is reversed, and pathways are enrolling higher proportions of low achieving students. So if we go to the next slide, you can see a summary chart, and you can kind of see this play out, this variation in enrollment patterns play out by district when we look at other student subgroups as well. But let me just take a second to orient you to this chart. So each row represents a different subgroup, and each color block represents one of the 8 districts included in the analysis. So the blue blocks represent districts in which the pathway enrollment for that subgroup was more than 5% lower than the district overall, so underrepresentation. Yellow means pathways were within 5% of the district overall, so proportionally represented. And the orange means that they were more than 5% higher than the district overall, so somewhat overrepresented. And as you can see, equitable access is challenging. Each subgroup of students we examined was over or underrepresented in pathways in at least one district, and usually more. So for example, this chart shows that English learners were overrepresented in pathways in 2 districts and underrepresented in 2 others. So essentially, we're seeing that the access challenges are context specific, right? And this makes sense if you think about it. These districts are geographically different in terms of how spread out they are, like how much ground they cover, which has implications for transportation. And they also have different residential patterns and demographic breakdowns. So if you're a district and you're grappling with pathway access, really the first thing to do is to take a look at your descriptive statistics and figure out what the unique challenges in your area are. And another dimension to consider is how your pathways look if you disaggregate by pathway theme. So again, I'm only going to show you one chart, but the brief has this for each subgroup. And honestly, most of the subgroups actually have more parity by theme, but I chose gender to show you one that was particularly dramatic. But as you can see, so first of all, these results are averaged across all of the 8 districts instead of 5 districts like the previous charts. But you can see across all the districts, female students were underrepresented in engineering pathways and overrepresented in health pathways. So because we tracked cohorts of students from 9th grade through high school completion and then into post-secondary, the access data that I just showed you, which is based on initial pathway enrollment, is lagged somewhat and comes from the earlier years of the initiative as compared to the outcomes data that I'll show you in a little bit. So that data came from the earlier years, but to improve access over the course of the initiative, districts adopted a number of strategies to help improve the representativeness of their pathways. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the particularly promising strategies. So the first one is having a required open choice selection process, which essentially means that all rising 8th graders, and not just the most informed or most motivated, select a high school program. And that programs don't have entrance criteria based on student academic performance. And then there's a fair procedure, such as randomization, to assign students in the case of oversubscribed pathways. Some districts in the initiative also focused on reducing the logistical barriers that disadvantaged students face in choosing a pathway outside of their neighborhood. So that included strategically locating pathways across the district and also in providing transportation. And so in any choice system, access to information is an important determinant of equity. So recruitment efforts can encourage students to think broadly about their career options and to consider opportunities beyond just their neighborhood school. And centralizing outreach and recruitment at the district level ensures a level of consistency in the awareness and the information of pathway options across the district. And finally, supports to help students succeed once they enroll in pathways are also important. So English learners, special education students, and students with low prior achievement all need tailored supports in order to succeed. So ensuring that pathways provide these supports determines whether there'll be genuine options for students and to some extent whether students will choose those pathways. Okay, so now I'm going to transition to equity. And again, I will just show you results for a few subgroups and let you go to the brief for the rest. And when you're looking at these charts, the dark blue bubbles represent estimates that are statistically significant at the p less than 0.05 level. And the lighter blue represents estimates that are more marginally significant. They're estimated a little bit less precisely at the p less than 0.10 level. So as you can see, participation in linked learning pathways had strong positive effects for students entering with low prior achievement. So on average, certified pathway students with low prior achievement were less likely to drop out, more likely to graduate from high school than similar peers in traditional high school programs. They accumulated more credits and more college preparatory requirements. And they also had slightly higher GPAs than similar peers, although that was marginally significant. And although students with low prior achievement in certified pathways were equally likely to enroll in post-secondary institutions as their similar peers, when they did enroll in a college, they were more likely to enroll in a four-year institution. So on the whole, the size of these differences indicate that participation in a certified pathway had a meaningful impact on outcomes for students with low prior achievement. So now let's look at English learners. On average, English learners in certified pathways earned more credits, and equivalent to about more than 2 additional courses, and completed 1 more college preparatory requirement than similar peers in traditional high school programs. And the results for English learners were promising for a variety of other outcomes, so dropout, graduation, and college enrollment, but these were less precisely estimated in only, 4-year college enrollment, but these results were less precisely estimated and only marginally significant. English learners in certified pathways were less likely to enroll in a post-secondary institution than similar students in traditional high schools, although again, this is marginally significant, but does point to the potential need to look a little bit more closely and examine the post-secondary transition supports that are offered to English learners in pathways. And then the last group that I'm going to go over with you today is African American students. And overall, we observed fewer effects of pathway participation on outcomes for African American students, but there were some really important positive ones. So on average, African American students in certified pathways earned more credits, roughly 3 courses more than African American students in traditional high school programs. They also accumulated 1 more college prep requirement and were more likely to graduate than their peers. And although these results were only marginally significant, the size of the graduation rate effect, so 5.7 percentage points increase, is equivalent in size to roughly 1/3 of California's gap in graduation rates between African American and white students. So that is a pretty substantial improvement. And we also found that African American students in certified pathways, while they were equally likely to enroll in post-secondary overall, if they did enroll, they were 12.4 percentage points more likely to enroll in a 4-year college versus a 2-year college than their peers. So that's pretty huge. So finally, I just wanted to show you a quick summary from the brief that shows just the direction and the significance of all the outcomes for all of the subgroups. So the filled-in upwards pointing arrows indicate results that are positive and statistically significant at the p less than 0.05 level. The empty upward pointing arrows are positive and marginally significant. Circles are non-significant findings. And then the downward pointing empty arrow, and there's only 1, is negative and marginally significant. So if you just look kind of across at the patterns across subgroups, I'd say the general takeaway is that across subgroups and outcomes, students in pathways generally did as well, and in many cases better, than their counterparts in traditional high school programs. So that was a quick summary. There's much more detail in the full brief, but now I'm going to turn it over to Sally Fowler, who is the Executive Officer of College and Career Readiness at Fresno Unified School District, and she can provide more insight on to what's happening at the district level.
Thank you, Maya. I'm happy to join the webinar today. The role of the Executive Officer for College and Career Readiness in Fresno Unified actually encompasses, I work with a fabulous team of people and I oversee all of our career technical education, guidance and counseling, grades 7 through 12, summer school and after school and credit recovery options within our district. So I have the option, actually the charge of leveraging all of those individuals and resources and abilities to actually help support our students through achievement. First, let me go over some of our demographic information for Fresno Unified. We are 67% Hispanic, 12% Asian, 9% African American, 10% of our students are white, and 1% cite multiple race, and another 1% are American Indian. In Fresno Unified, I would say that we have had a journey towards equity and access and putting that work at the forefront of our decision making within our district. We are going on year 4 of our linked learning journey, so we are a novice and compared to the 9 districts in which Maya presented information on. Our pathways have no entrance criteria. They're open to all students beginning in the 9th grade. We do a concentrated recruitment effort in the 8th grade to expose our students. Next year, we're actually expanding that to have an extravaganza where every 8th grader will come to our convention center to learn about the different pathways and opportunities that are available to them as a choice when they enter their choice of high school. We have developed after-school, summer, and off-site programs that support students who may not be able to be participating in our pathways for one reason or another, and have aligned those kinds of opportunities to our linked learning pathways so that when a student actually wants to access a 2-hour ROP type course, they can do that as well. Our district began by adopting a definition of a career-ready graduate, and the definition is a career-ready graduate is a student who has all possible options available to them upon graduation from Fresno Unified School District. The student has a strong academic foundation, has completed required courses, and has acquired the workplace skills and competencies necessary for success after high school. Our district's vision is to produce career-ready graduates, not just students that are going to go on to college, but students who actually have a vision for themselves and a dream about what they want to be after high school. And if that includes college, then we'll prepare them academically for that. Our definition for a career-ready graduate, we have a guiding principle that translates to the adoption of practices and procedures that ensure all students are given equal opportunity to graduate, having the greatest number of post-secondary choices from the widest array of options. And the key word in our guiding principle really is about choice. So we have to provide our students the right academic rigor and the right choices that they can have these opportunities upon graduation. And linked learning pathways are one way in which we're helping to prepare our students. Our district actually supports all of our work with regular district general fund from our LCAP, and then we are very fortunate that we have had some career pathway trust grant and our CTE incentive grant, which have helped to drive this work. And though our graduation rates have continued to climb, we continue to be a low achieving district. We've had course failure rates, D and F, which affects a student's ability to continue in their pathway, and which has resulted in low EAP scores and places many of our graduates in remediation upon entering college. We developed MOUs with our local community college district, our local CSU, and our local UC Merced, in which we're able to share student data. We have a large database in which we upload our data, and then we can extrapolate that data to look at our students' persistence once they go to college, which has allowed us to have great discussions about multiple measures for college entrance. The advantage of having college readiness under my group is that it allows us to look at how our students do, what majors they choose, and using this data to advantage our decision making within our district to help our students reach their goal if college is one of their choices. Next, I'd like to talk about how, in terms of trying to reach out to diverse students, our pathway enrollment is reflective of our district's diverse student population. It's open to all students, and we recruit beginning in our middle school level. And then linked learning pathways are a choice. Students can choose to be part of a pathway or choose not to be. We are fortunate in that we also have standalone CTE offerings within our high school. We've actually worked on those offerings to be pretty high level in terms of work-based learning and the other structures to make sure students can be successful. But we've also worked to move our courses into A to G compliance. So in our early years back in 2009, only about 4% of our courses were A to G, and now about 72% of our CTE courses, when it's appropriate, are CTE. Some challenges that our district faces is master scheduling. So we have a great team who work on master scheduling. It's a team effort between our district curriculum and instruction department, our site admin team, our counselor teams, and then also our college and career readiness team work on how we can build into the master scheduling. Our teachers work 5 of 6 periods, so a student's maximum schedule is 6 periods. So that leaves us with negotiating additional FTE for teachers to teach outside of that 6-period day, or to provide before school or after school opportunities through our after school funding, so that students can be able to complete a certification or other opportunities. Master scheduling continues to be a challenge in terms of getting teachers to have common preps. So we've worked out some systems with supplemental contracts where teachers can meet on their own time. And then also looking at technology to be used where teachers can use a OneDrive to upload documents and share those documents among the team as well. So we're trying to expand our creative way of getting our teachers to plan together. We value that time because we feel that teachers who plan together develop a stronger program, and our students have better success when they're able to do that. In Fresno Unified, we transport to every one of our school sites. So transportation is obviously of high demand. It doesn't leave a lot of buses available if a student wants to travel across the city of Fresno to go to a different high school. So in some ways, transportation limits opportunities for our kids. And our public transportation is actually limited as well. Fresno is a very high poverty district. 89% of our students would be on free and reduced lunch. And our district, our city as a whole, is high poverty as well, which actually impacts our district in terms of we can't rely on public transportation to be a solution for some of our issues. We, as a district, have struggled to identify our response for intervention tools at every single one of our sites. We had our principals institution, they have an institute every June, and it was just this last week, and that was one of the topics that we had on their agenda to really look at how can we better support our students and when they're struggling within not only a linked learning pathway in our integrated courses, but in any course, so that if they do receive a lower grade, they can continue. We have a very robust summer school program. As our graduation rate has risen, the need for remedial summer school has dropped a little bit, but we still began our summer with about 15,000 students enrolled in summer school opportunities. This year, we actually added some CTE opportunities in grades 3 through 5 and in middle school, and also we had some academies run during the summer session for our high school kids. Next, I'd like to talk about how our pathways, how they register into the linked learning certification, and Aaron will discuss a little bit more about that in our webinar. But we're using certification as a process to help incentivize and measure progress of all of our pathways so we can ensure that there's equitable opportunities and access to high-quality linked learning pathways. So keeping our pathways through the certification process allows us to look at individual pathways that might need support, individual courses within a pathway that might need support. We're pursuing certification for all of our pathways. It's a district-wide effort. Each site has a pathway coordinator, and these are fabulous individuals who step in at every single school site. They're assigned to all of our comprehensives and our magnet opportunities. We have a vocational magnet, Duncan Polytechnical, and an entrepreneurial magnet at Patino. They come together. In fact, they're meeting this week to plan out their summer professional learning and also to plan out their year. Each department, they assist our linked learning pathways at our site to move towards certification. They allow our students to apply for another high school pathway so we can make broad outcomes no matter which pathway. We've designed those outcomes to be very similar so students have an equitable outcome. Each of our pathways by grade level have work-based learning opportunities that have been identified. Work-based learning we find is a key for student engagement, and the quality of that work-based learning will determine whether or not students choose to continue to persist through that pathway. And then identifying what student supports we can offer within our pathway. As our teachers plan together, it really helps us a little bit more to allow them to identify as a team which students are struggling and what they can do to step in and to support those students as well. Our journey has been a short one, going on 4 years, but we're excited to reach this 4-year journey. Since we started this journey, we've actually added about 22 pathways to our district. To look at equity among where those pathways are, we used our CCPT grant to actually start health pathways on all of our high schools so that students wouldn't have to relocate if they were interested, for instance, in health. It's a very high employment need within our valley, so it has really, I think, helped provide some equity for our students. So next, I believe that we're going to transition to our student, Kuiko Power. Linked learning is transformative for our students, and so we're happy to have a linked learning student with us. She's from the environmental science pathway, and she's here with us to share her personal journey and story. So, Kuiko, we welcome you onto the webinar.
First off, I'd like to start by saying thank you for having me as part of this panel and valuing student voice. I appreciate this opportunity and the experience and the opportunity to share my experience with linked learning. My name is Kuiko Power, and I'm an incoming 11th grader at Oakland High School, and my pathway is environmental science, as well as the, a CFJ student leader. So what my pathway has actually offered was a more hands-on approach to learning, not just that like you learn something for a test and it's gone. What we actually do, we take out into real world situations and apply it physically. So we're actually using that knowledge for something, as well as the fact that pathways also help when students are struggling, because instead of the ratio of student to admin being like 1,000 to 1 or 2, the ratio becomes 200 to 300 to 5 or 6 admins. So it's easier for admins and teachers to work together to support their students in ways that benefit us. The pathways, my pathway specifically has events in which all grades are put together, so it's not just separated by grade. Everyone works together for different situations, and you're constantly needing to switch between classrooms of different grades to talk to either a teacher or a student or to work on a project. No one's really separated. On top of that pathways allow me and my fellow students to have other extracurricular activities, that being internships or programs that we can join. They go out looking for these programs to help enrich us. And because of this, it adds to a college prep aspect, where college isn't being shoved down your throat. It's actually like steadily built into the curriculum, and you get to choose whether, if you feel like your college is your after plan for high school, you can go there. You don't feel like you're stressed out and not ready for whatever life has got to throw at you for college. But the differences between pathways and regular high school is that in my like experiences, my friends who are in regular high school, they don't have designated people to go to. So they're people who are designated to help them achieve what they need to do, are the like main principal and his office staff, which is hard for them to reach because they're either in meetings or other activities. Whereas in pathways, you have 5 to 6 admins, and they're more accessible because they're not constantly in meetings worrying about the overall school per se. So with this being said, possible challenges of linked learning is the fact that in like my school specifically, or my district specifically, pathways are ranked, and unconsciously, just like in life, things get ranked, but pathways are ranked between what's quote unquote harder and what's easier. So students who don't believe in themselves will tend to gravitate towards pathways that are ranked as easier or not as quote unquote rigid as the others. So these pathways, this ideology that pathways are better than one another creates a student belief gap, which we often don't recognize. And when we talk about belief gaps, we think about the belief gap between teachers and students, or admins and students, or students, but never students in themselves. So it becomes something that we don't see often. But in order to address linked learning, the impact of linked learning, and how we can best benefit our students, we also have to address the belief gap between our students and themselves. And this can be done by having an adult. It only takes one adult to speak up on behalf of that student and have that student be placed in a better pathway that was better suiting to them than the pathway they would normally choose because of how they feel about themselves. So for me, for example, I used to tutor a couple of friends of mine who are in a different pathway than me. And while tutoring them, I could see that they had great potential, and their potential was good enough to be in like my academy, which is supposed to be the hardest academy in the school. Well, while I was tutoring them, I got the chance to ask why they picked that pathway, and it was all because they didn't want to have to deal with the workload. Whereas the workload they were dealing with now, they were struggling with because the workload wasn't something they found like entertaining to do. So one solution that CFJ found for this is relationship-centered schools, which is when students have adults that they are connected to and they're able to talk to and talk to their problems. And these adults can see problems before the student sees them and advocate for these students. And as well as that, we also have to address the underlying belief gap between students and themselves, not just students and teachers or teachers and admin. In conclusion, what we need to do is make sure students feel great about themselves in order to have their best ability in our schools and build up our districts. Thank you.
Thanks, Kwiko, for sharing your experience. It's amazing, and you're extremely articulate, like most CFJ student leaders. And as a former board member of Californians for Justice, it's always great to hear a student leader talking about their experience so articulately. So thank you again. So what we're going to do now is transition into explaining very briefly what the linked learning certification and analytics process is, and how these systems help advance and support equity and access in linked learning for districts and regions. So The linked learning analytics and certifications are resources that were developed by the linked learning field for two very specific reasons. One is the process of pathway certification and how to ensure that pathways themselves are rigorously vetted, but vetted in a way that ensures there's a feedback loop between people establishing pathways and the process of vetting them over time. So that's the analytics process. It's linked to the pathway certification process because what it does is it essentially allows for measuring the impact of linked learning on students over time. So one is a process of certification, and the other is a process of taking a look at how students are doing as they move through the pathways themselves. So the analytics actually, to take a deeper dive, helps districts track pathway progress, demographics, and improvement in student outcomes, including college and career readiness indicators, and including data elements aligned to the state priorities within the LCAPs. These metrics will help pathways, schools, districts, and regions identify success in access and opportunity and outcomes in high school linked learning pathways, and ultimately in college and career success. And the goals of these practices informed through these metrics is to ensure that more students, particularly underrepresented students, complete high school, earn a college degree and or a professional credential, and enter a financially sustaining and professionally relevant career. And so these are actually well connected. Again, this is the analytics process to the LCAP data elements, so this is not something separate that folks are going to be doing, but these are the data elements in many cases that districts are already collecting, whether they're in the U.S. or whether they're in California or across the U.S. There are also data elements that are extremely important to measure student outcomes over the course of their secondary experience, and in some cases into post-secondary. So that's the analytics system. And then again, the certification system is a process that is linked to the analytics system to ensure that the pathway that you're developing over a period of time is actually certified and approved as a linked learning pathway. And both of these two tools have been developed through the Linked Learning Alliance. The great thing about this is that we're at Pivot Learning, we're actually collaborating with the Linked Learning Alliance, and we've launched an initiative called Beyond High School, and this initiative is being led by Laura Flaxman, who founded Life Academy in Oakland. And what we're doing is we're partnering with the Alliance and then 3 districts, Oceanside Unified, Monterey Peninsula Unified, and Bonsall Unified. And in 2 of these districts, we're actually working to redesign the full secondary pathway, middle school into high school. And it's not just the pathways, not just establishing pathways in the schools, but it's a full secondary redesign. And in one of the districts, we're actually working on just the high school redesign. But again, the reason we call it Beyond High School is that we're really thinking about post-secondary, and we're also thinking about early secondary, middle school, as part of this work. The great thing about the certification process is that as we're working on the redesign, the schools themselves can see themselves moving through the certification process. And because we started with the data collection on the front end, we can also see how these key indicators are changing over time. So again, very excited about this work, very excited about the collaboration, and we are looking forward to continuing to see the progress through the analytics system on how this is actually impacting students that are working through the redesigned pathway in each of these redesigned secondary school experiences.
Thank you, Arun, for those reflections and for helping us learn more about linked learning certification and linked learning analytics. And what great information from Mia and Sally and Quaco, all from different perspectives, but very important. So now we're going to open up for questions, open the floor up for questions. So send us your questions on the chat box so that we can start our Q&A session. You see Nancy typing in there. The place to send your questions on the bottom right or the right of your screen in the menu there. Don't be shy.
Okay, I think we have a few questions already.
So we have a few questions.
We looked at something from alternate high schools.
Nancy, do you want to read them since you're closer to the screen there?
I'm trying to like open it to make it a little bigger. So this question says, have you looked at linked learning pathways in alternative high schools?
This is Mia. I can take this one to start. So the results that we just presented do not include alternative high schools. The district initiative really focused on creating pathways, within the traditional high school setting to begin with. But that said, there is definitely some work going on now that I know of in Alameda County, for example, Oakland Unified School District, to kind of take the linked learning approach and adapt it to work in the alternative high school setting. And I think that has some real promising, it's a really promising approach. There hasn't been, to my knowledge, the research on the effectiveness of linked learning in those settings yet, but as more places try it out, there will be that opportunity to have a large enough sample size to look at that. So that'll be exciting.
This is Sally Fowler. In Fresno, we're just beginning that journey with our alt-ed sites. We had done a learning journey by traveling to other districts to look at their alt-ed programs. And then this summer, we have sent alt-ed teachers to the Buck Institute for project-based learning to just kind of kick off the discussions around integrated instruction. So we're beginning to look at that, and we'll probably start with academic integration and then begin to add in our CTE after that. So we're at the very, very beginning stages.
Thanks, Mia. Our next question is how we can get a copy of the SRI report, and the Linked Learning Alliance staff will be sending a copy out to everyone by email after the webinar. The next question is, what about special needs students? Who wants to take that up?
I'll start again, just in terms of what's in the report. It's a great question, and we did look at special needs students in terms of the access piece, because those were just descriptive statistics. So we were able to do it for special education students, even though they were a pretty small population. When it came to the equity results, the analytic models, because there was a pretty small group of special education students in pathways, we actually just didn't have the sample size to be able to run our models for that group. So that's a limitation, but I think it's definitely something that warrants further research.
Now, question.
Go
Go
ahead.
for it. No, Sally, go for it.
Well, I know that around special ed there is some adult belief issues that tend to surface. And within our district, our pathways are open to all students, but we notice that I think our SPED population is underrepresented in our linked learning pathways. So we've kind of begun to look at why that might be. And, you know, it has a lot to do with what the goals are for special ed to get more students to graduate. Quite often will mean more academic courses. So we're kind of pitching it from the viewpoint of what CTE and linked learning provides is the application of the academics, which quite often then will help students achieve better because they get the why, but they also get to practice using those academics in a way that is more real life or real world, as our students shared.
So our next question is whether or not the Alliance is going to publish a handbook around certification. We have an expert here.
Hi, this is Alex Tagavian with the Linked Learning Alliance. The short answer to this question is no. We don't currently have plans to publish a handbook, and the reason is twofold. One is that the certification platform has been built to be as user-friendly as possible, and the flows of the system, the navigation of the system is designed in a way that can be both self-directed and have a high degree of ease of use. So that's one reason. The second reason is that we also have a communication app within the platform. It's akin to an intercom, so that if any of our teachers or pathway users have a question, there's a very simple way for them to inquire with the linked learning staff to get clarification or ask for advice. So for those two reasons, we've not found the need to create a handbook. Sally, I know at Fresno has loaded a few dozen pathways from the district on the certification platform. So I don't know if you want to add any more to that, and if not, we can move on to the next question.
Just really very brief. We chose a methodology in which we had a few people that were kind of the learners, if you will, train the trainer. And then they came back then and spent time with each of our pathway coordinators to train them, who then go out and work with each of our teachers to make sure that it really is very intuitive and it's really built very user-friendly. But it takes some management on the part of reminders and to make sure everyone's doing what they need to be doing. So once we kind of trained everyone, now it's a matter of making sure that they're actually inputting and utilizing the tool on a regular basis. So we just calendared it, if you will, into our structures.
I also want to share that you can find more information on the Linked Learning Alliance website. So please look there as well. So a question that we have is asking for clarification, and it's addressed to Sally about how the, did I see this one right here? Oh dear. How the pathway outcomes between, or whether or not they were similar across all pathways in the district. And if they were, did it help with transiency of students who transferred among sites? Do you understand that question the way I phrased it, Sally?
Yes, I do. I think I do. Well, you'll tell by my answer, wouldn't you? But I think so. You know, the object was to make sure that every student had some similar outcomes. In other words, that each of our pathways had very similar A to G outcomes. Each of our pathways provided opportunities for students to have internships. Each of ours have pathways have some kind of summer or after school activity that they can enhance their certification, that each pathway has dual enrollment. So regardless of the pathway that you are in, you're going to have a similar outcome. they're just different kinds of interest levels. But because we're so new at this, we just finished year 3, we haven't had a lot of transiency within the high school, and we haven't had a lot of transiency from one high school to the next. We'll know more as we go deeper with our recruitment at the 7th and 8th grade levels, but I do think that our biggest challenge has to do with student achievement. So if they are getting D's and F's and they're not able to make that up during after school credit recovery or summer school, it's hard for them to persist. That's a bigger obstacle for us in terms of consistency. Did that answer it?
I think it did, and I hope the asker will chat in if it didn't.
Okay.
So here's another question. Someone clarify whether it was the students who ranked the pathways based on peer information, or was it information, or if it was site personnel who ranked the pathways.
So the way the pathways are ranked is like word of mouth and existence, because at my school we have two pathways who've been there since like 20 years ago, and like the newer pathways are coming in. So it's more or less like age and experience and how much support that the pathways have had so far, and how like their anchorings within the school itself. So the pathways tend to be ranked by not just word of mouth, but kind of just how experienced the pathways have been inside the school and how much funding or support they get.
Right, thank you, Quaco. Another question, other than one-to-one, oh man, I am not following these. Excuse me. Were there any specific lessons for recruiting and retaining students of color in pathways, especially male Latinos and African American students?
You know, that's a really good question. I think in terms of recruitment, some of the promising strategies we saw, I'll talk about two. One is, and this is a little bit more general and not necessarily specific subgroups, but doing kind of outreach into the middle schools is something that a lot of districts are starting to do. So making sure students have some exposure to the different kind of career themes of the pathways in their districts early, so they can make informed choices, and you know, hoping that they'll, you know, might kind of spur them to choose a pathway that's not necessarily one in their neighborhood school. And then in terms of the question of you know, targeting young men of color, I can tell you from you know, from my experience in Oakland, for example, you know, they're having particular issues for like certain types of pathways. Maybe like the engineering pathway wasn't attracting enough young men of color. So when they were doing their recruitment, they were very strategic about using high school students from that group to do some of the outreach to the younger students, bringing in professionals from that group to talk to students. Those are a few of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, but others probably can join in as well.
Any insights? Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other insights? All right, on to the next question. Other than one-to-one with an adult and peer support to increase students' belief in themselves and close the gap, their belief gap, what other strategies are being used? Are parents encouraged?
So this is Sally from Fresno Unified. Within our district, we have what's called Parent University, and It is basically a group of staff that are assigned to assist parents with learning about the district and navigating through a large urban district like ours. We develop presentations that we do with our parents, and we also leverage our parents at the adult school to help them understand CTE offerings. We have a school of choice night in which parents can come and bring their children if they would like to learn about the various opportunities at each of our high schools. I do think that we do very targeted outreach. The majority of our parents are Spanish speaking. However, actually today they're interviewing for an individual, an executive director to oversee our African American student plan, in which we're actually going after targeting our students and parents because we still see a struggle within the achievement gap between our Hispanic students, our Caucasian or white students, and our African American students. So we want to leverage some opportunities. So some of the techniques to do that are to do targeted recruitment and then targeted outreach to parents, especially within our faith-based communities as well. We're going to see how this goes. We've written a plan, but the person that we hire will be charged with really fact-finding and a lot of student voice work, because we think that part of our issues are we may not understand our students and our students may not understand us, but more importantly, we need a student voice in how we develop our systems and programs. And without that student voice, we're really not meeting our constituents and may not be serving them in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Sally.
also, oh, this is me, I was just going to add, kind of ensuring that any recruitment materials or outreach materials are translated into the languages of your English learner population can also help ensure that those parents also have access to the information.
I also want to share that the Link Learning Alliance has new translated materials on the website, so Spanish and Chinese. So you might want to look at those if you think they would address your needs. Was there anyone else who wanted to comment or respond to the question? Okay, back to Sally. How is Fresno balancing students taking more rigorous college prep coursework with choice?
So for many of our pathways, we build AP or IB as part of the pathway. And quite often, like in our health pathways, when we looked at our data in terms of student persistence once they left us and were at a 2-year or a 4-year institution, they struggled with their science offerings if they were interested, for instance, to continue on in a health pathway. So we added more science, but in an applied kind of science to each of the grade levels so that we could better support our students. So it's a matter of looking at data, but sometimes, once again, adult beliefs kind of get in the way, and it is about student choice. So providing students with dual enrollment opportunities when sometimes an AP may not even net them what they think it might net them at a 4-year institution. If it's a transferable dual enrollment course, they come with transcripted credits, so it equalizes for all of our students those opportunities. So it's about leveraging and keeping track of, because we know our CSU and UCs change their mind from year to year. So we are in constant conversation with them to make sure that if we need to change pathway courses so that we still get equitable outcomes, we can do that. It's pretty targeted work.
Well, thank you for doing it. The next question is there any data that speak to how the difficulty with cohorting and or master scheduling should be addressed. Alex, can you answer that or start off?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of ways we can discuss what is and what is not available. First, though, Mia, is there anything within the data set and the research led by SRI that does speak to this? And if not, then we can talk through what we can support through the analytic system.
I'll just say that I think our research really highlights the importance of cohorting and master scheduling that kind of both supports the ability to cohort students and, also the ability for, as Sally mentioned, for teachers to meet in common planning time. And it also just, we have a lot of data on the challenges districts face in kind of figuring those systems out and the value of having some support in order to kind of figure out the puzzle pieces of the master schedule. And I know that there are supports available, Kazan, for example, and Alex, you can probably speak to those more than I can.
Yeah, thanks, Nia. Presently in our data system, we are not collecting data elements within the pathway custom file that relate to cohort like flagging and scheduling matters. That said, we have been working with a group of half a dozen or so districts who have been our trailblazers, helping us to design the dashboard, the analytics, the intake process for the data set in a way that can best serve them. So Sally at Fresno and her colleague on the data side of the district have been a part of that work. And I also am happy to introduce during this webinar our newest staff member at the Alliance, Sarah Piotrowski, who joins us as our Director of Analytics, and she comes from Sacramento City Unified School District, where she was one of the data leads there. So anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it, Alex.
Great. And I know we have a data question next, so I'll go ahead and read that one as well. The question is, are there plans to collect more or different kinds of data that address issues of equity in linked learning pathways? So I will actually turn that over to Sarah.
So the first things that come to mind for that question are our plans to start collecting data from the National Student Clearinghouse and from the College Board, because we know that both access and success in college is an important equity issue, as well as access to rigorous coursework, such as AP courses. So as we plan to start putting those pieces of information into our system, we look forward to what it tells us about how our students are being served in those two areas in an equitable way.
Yeah, and just to wrap too, we also are presently collecting all forms of data that allow for analyses across different student subgroups that include race, free and reduced lunch, foster children, special needs, and so forth.
So much here. The next question is, what is the counselor impact on pathway success, both in Oakland and or Fresno? The impact of counselors.
So in Fresno, our counselors actually participate with assisting our students in career cruising, which is our web-based career exploration tool. It allows us then to collect that data. We also do surveying of our students to ask them about what their career interests are as they progress in their grade level, as we do their planning for their 4 years of high school and the 5th year after high school. We are now connecting more of our counselor work to what the student interest is. We've always said, know your students by name, by need, and also now by interest, so that we then can combine that with opportunities going on our school campuses. We have a person called a job developer. It's really more like a career technician, a classified position, who then looks at what the students' interests are in the career cruising data and invites specific students to come and hear guest speakers and receive additional supports from colleges. We work with our college ambassadors for both our community college and our CSU and UC around student interest as well, to make sure that they're connecting with the right college level in order for them to achieve their goal as quickly as possible and complete that goal so that they can then reach their career goal.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Go ahead.
This is me. I guess I can just say that, I think in terms of the years we've been following linked learning in the district initiative, some of those were some pretty rough budget years, and the counselor to student ratios were pretty high during low during those years. So, I think there were some examples of districts where they were very intentional about assigning counselors to pathways. So they had a good were sort of part of the pathway team and had a good sense of everything that was going on within the pathway, and other examples where it was a bit more of an afterthought. But I think that is definitely an area going forward that could kind of use more attention.
Quaco, do you have any insight or experience around counselors to share?
Yes, actually. So for us, every counselor is assigned to a pathway, because we have two sets of pathways. We have pathways from sophomore year to senior year, and then we have our freshman pathways. And the freshman pathways link up to the other path, to this more the senior year pathways. So every counselor has either 1 to 3 pathways, and those are the students that they see. So your freshman year, you're assessed already, and you're put into different pathways based on likes or courses you choose. So for me, I was actually in the feeder pathway into the academy that I was in. So my counselor is the same person, and this counselor has known me since I got into the path, since 9th grade, and it's been the same for all my admin. And that gives them the ability to build stronger relationships with their students, because they're seeing the same students for all 4 years or so of high school, and it makes it easier for them to know what their student needs based on pathway and other and credits and all the other technicalities that high school puts students through.
That's great, and it leads into this next question. What other strategies are being used to close the belief gap within students so that we can strengthen how students believe in themselves? And that's for anyone.
Well, this is me. I'm just thinking out loud here. It kind of seemed like part of Quaco's point was that certain pathways were perceived to be less rigorous than other pathways, and that was sort of contributing to this word of mouth ranking system in the district. So I think really attending to the rigor of your pathways and ensuring that they all are really truly college and career preparatory programs. If the rigor is at the right level, then that will trickle down into what students perceive and into the reputation of pathways in the districts. So I think maybe that's part of it, but probably not the whole answer.
This is Sally from Fresno. I think that the reason there's probably a lot of silence is because I think that there's no one effort. In our student voice work, in our student forums, we really hear from our students that it's dependent upon adult belief in them. And if they're paired with very caring teachers who believe all students can learn and all students can achieve, those teachers really ensure students are not going to fall through the cracks and not fail. So it's really, it behooves us as adults to really be looking at our data on a regular basis and looking at our students. We developed a tool in Fresno Unified that is like an early warning tool, because it looks at students' behavior, it looks at their attendance, it looks at their academics, it looks at whether or not they're engaged in other opportunities outside of the school day, and then ranks them by a color, so we know which of those students are of high need, because maybe they have attendance problems, they're not engaged in school in any other way other than coming to their regular assigned classes, and maybe they have behavior issues, and it places them at a higher color need than others. So at least we have an early warning system where we're trying to counteract to find out what is it about our kids that does not allow them to persist. So even though it's sort of a data, kind of a less sort of nurturing sounding system, it compels our adults, because then we can track within our counseling system and within our social worker system to make sure that our high need kids are being seen and are being tended to. So in my worry is always that someone's going to go unnoticed. And the early warning system has so far proven to be a good tool for us to use. It's just one of many tools, but it's a tool in which we're able to actually track activities of adults and then actually develop plans for our kids to help them to be successful or to reconnect. Or maybe it's the family who needs counseling together, or maybe it's a student, but for us to address things in a little bit more personal nature.
Yeah, and I'll just say, you know, we did survey students as part of our evaluation, and in both Pathways and traditional high schools, and we found that students in Pathways did sort of feel like they had stronger relationships with their teachers, and someone who they could go to if they had a problem, received more guidance on kind of college and careers. I think partially because of that small learning community cohorted structure that Pathways have that doesn't necessarily exist in your standard comprehensive high school. So those results are not in the equity brief. They're in actually the 6th-year annual report, but there's a lot of survey results there if you're interested in kind of hearing the student voice a little bit more.
Thank you, Mia. That's really interesting. I'll go back and look at that report, because I think, first of all, the acknowledgement that student voice is key is so important, and the closure of the belief gap is also really critical. And hopefully we can have somebody do a presentation or presentations at our upcoming Link Learning Convention next year. So now's a good time to share or to encourage you to save the date for the Link Learning Convention in 2018. It will be in February 12 through 14, and it's going to be in Anaheim, California at the Anaheim Marriott, which I understand is the happiest place on earth. It's at Disneyland. Before we sign off, I definitely want to thank Nancy Zhang, staff here at the Alliance, for making us look so good and being the technician, and as well as Sasha and Hillary, who have also supported us in putting this on. There will be a webinar recording, and this will be sent to you through email. And this concludes the webinar. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a good afternoon.